I was only curious about the campus beauties. Hair wanted to know how it smelled. Who knew she'd pin me in a corner and force a kiss on me? The next day, I was famous across campus. My roommates practically begged me for dating tips. Even the university president personally reminded me to focus on my studies. But the whole mess began because I lost a dare to my roommates. Nearly in tears, I wanted the campus beauty to clear things up. But to my surprise, the girl flushed with shame and anger. What do you mean? You had your way with me, and now you're going to dump me? On the second day after freshman registration, I made the top headline on the campus forum. Everyone was wildly spreading that ridiculous incident on the military training field. They said the icy campus beauty, in full public view, had grabbed my collar tight, yanked me close, and forcibly kissed me. After reading it, my mind was full of question marks. This cursed dare had been Feng Yuan's idea. The guy slept in the bunk above mine. Less than 3 days into school, he had already built himself a persona, declaring himself our dorm's social butterfly. His sole purpose in life was causing as much chaos as possible. When the instructor called for a break, the 4 of us sprawled out in the shade at the edge of the field. The heat had baked us like for dehydrated dead fish. The blazing early autumn sun could melt a person. Our heavy training uniforms clung damply to our backs. Every face was etched with despair and world weariness. Then Feng Yuan somehow pulled out a crumpled deck of cards and suggested a game of dares. Whoever came in last had to smell the hair of that ice queen beauty. Jia Liang and Zhang Wei both turned to look at me. Their expressions seemed to say, "This unlucky bastard has to be you." Sure enough, I got destroyed. For 3 straight rounds, I came in dead last every time. From a mystical perspective, I was clearly heaven's chosen king of bad luck. When those 3 animals shoved me out together, I was still fighting desperately inside. Mikai was sitting alone under a big tree across from us, quietly reading. Her serene presence and the field's noisy atmosphere did not belong in the same world. Honestly, from that far away, I could only make out her profile, yet that outline alone was beautiful enough to take my breath away. The graceful curve of her lowered lashes, the dark strands drifting beside her ear, and as her fingertips turned a page, the captivating curl of her knuckles. I stood there stupidly for 2 or 3 seconds. Then, Feng Yuan planted a hard kick on my butt. "What are you staring at? Get over there." I moved toward her, my legs weak, as if I were walking on clouds. My heart was no longer merely pounding. It was throwing a rave in my chest. One moment it slammed into my left ribs. The next, it crashed against my back. The instant I leaned down, a wisp reached my nose. A fresh, delicate gardenia fragrance. Nothing like the harsh scent of cheap supermarket shampoo. The scent was extraordinarily soft. You had to get extremely close to catch even the faintest trace of it. Like an invisible thread, ethereal and elusive. There, yet not quite there. But once you smelled it, you could never pull away. Then, she turned her head without warning. We were far too close. Between the tips of our noses, there was less than a hand's width. My gaze crashed into her eyes. They were clear, deep brown eyes. Shock and anger tangled in them. But what showed through most was the panic of a startled deer. Instinctively, she raised a hand. Her slender fingers hooked my collar. She did not use much force. It was more like when someone is frightened, instinctively grabbing the nearest lifeline. "What exactly are you trying to do?" Her voice was cold enough to chip ice, yet the fingers gripping my collar were trembling uncontrollably. In that single second, my survival instinct went through the roof. Sorry, I really am sorry. My friends forced me to do it." Only then did she seem to realize how intimate her gesture looked. She released me as if shocked. She did not spare me another glance. She snatched up her book and hurried away. From the shade behind me erupted the deranged laughter of 3 animals. Feng Yuan clutched his stomach, shaking with laughter. Jia Liang was even worse. He laughed himself right off his mat and into the dirt. That bastard Zhang Wei laughed while holding up his phone, taking a barrage of pictures of me. I slunk back and dropped hard onto the ground. "Are you idiots seriously insane?" Feng Yuan wiped tears from his eyes and said, "Shovel." That pathetic look on your face was legendary. I recorded it and captured screenshots. I will save them for your wedding as a surprise on the big screen. Screw you. I thought this farce would finally be over. But the next morning, the moment I unlocked my phone, the pin post on the campus forum, blazing red as a trending topic, left me stunned. Its headline read, "Icy Goddess pounces on male freshman at training field, pins him against a wall and forces a kiss." The post also included a terribly blurry candid side shot. The camera angle was utterly cursed. I seriously suspected the creep who took it had been hanging upside down from a tree branch. The photo caught the exact moment she turned around, with her hand grabbing my collar. From that voyeur's angle, our faces looked almost pressed together. It really did look like we were making out. The comments had already passed 800 replies. Every top comment wailed that the goddess was taken. They were frantically trying to dox me, the mysterious male lead. "Please, we beg for a clear, high-resolution photo of his face. I lay dumbfounded on my dorm bunk. My hand twitched, and my phone nearly smashed my toes. Feng Yuan's huge head hung down from the top bunk. Holy crap, shovel. This time, you are completely famous. Jia Liang was furiously refreshing the post. It already had over 1,000 likes. Zhang Wei's stump was even more outrageous. He actually replied under his real name. I know the guy in the photo. He is loyal and good-looking, with an amazing personality too. He is absolutely one of my best friends. Then he even gave it an enthusiastic like. I cannot thank you lunatics enough. I opened the text box, planning to write a long post explaining everything. But after typing a huge wall of text, I deleted all of it. I kept writing and deleting, going back and forth 5 or 6 times, because after closing my eyes and thinking it through, I knew exactly what would happen if I posted a clarification. The paid trolls below would definitely insist that I was a heartless bastard who used her and ran. You got all the benefits, and you still refused to take responsibility. The goddess really chose the wrong guy. After all, online, people never care about reason. The harder you try to clear your name, the more they think you are hiding the truth. Forget it. Playing dead was safer. Once this blows over, everyone will naturally forget. Unfortunately, heaven had no intention of letting me off so easily. On the afternoon, military training ended. Right after the instructor dismissed us, I was carrying a large water jug and slowly making my way back to the dorm. Just as I passed a massive plane tree, a massive dark shadow swallowed me whole. It was not cast by the leaves. It was a mountain of flesh. I craned my neck up. A hulking man with a buzz cut stood there. He had to be over 6'3". His neck was nearly as thick as my thigh. His facial muscles were sharply defined, like a three-dimensional anatomy chart. The way he looked down at me was like he was inspecting an insignificant bug. He seemed to be deciding whether to crush me with his left foot or his right. Your shovel. My knees suddenly buckled. I nearly dropped to them. Still, I forced myself to stay calm and asked, "Who are you, sir?" "Me Feng." He snorted coldly. "Me Kai's older brother." Trembling, I studied his vicious-looking face. Then my gaze drifted downward to his sandbag-sized iron fist. That fist was even larger than my wash basin. My brain was already composing my final words. "Mom, Dad, your son has failed you." I died before even finishing half my studies. Cause of death: because I accidentally sniffed another guy's little sister's hair. Before I could finish that thought, he grabbed me by the collar. His grip was insanely strong. Did the Me family all inherit a talent for grabbing collars? Was their DNA hardwired with, when in doubt, grab their collar first, as a family creed? I heard, "You had the nerve to sniff my sister's hair." I had just opened my mouth, ready to explain myself properly, when the phone in his pocket suddenly rang. Its ringtone was the classic nursery song, Little Star. Yes, the one that goes, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." That children's song. And it was an especially babyish version. A soft little child's voice echoed through the air. Looking at his fierce face, then hearing that childish ringtone, the fear in my heart was abruptly transformed into an indescribable sense of absurdity. Me Feng threw me aside and answered the phone. His expression changed visibly in an instant, going from "I am about to kill you" to "Mom, I was wrong. I really did not hit him. I am not lying to you. The kid is standing right here, alive and kicking. Please calm down first, and do not get too worked up." All right, I will give him the phone now." He held the phone out to me. His expression was a sight to behold. He looked exactly like a giant dog that had just been harshly scolded by its owner, too aggrieved to dare make a sound. The voice from the receiver was unbelievably gentle. "Is this Shovel? I heard you and our Kai have gotten quite close. Come have a simple meal at our home this weekend. My braised pork is something special." I looked at Me Feng, whose eyes looked ready to devour me alive, then heard this warm, motherly invitation. What kind of hospitality was this anyway? Schrodinger's, apparently. If I went over this weekend, would I be attending a dinner or marching to my death? Okay, Annie, thank you in advance, then. The second the call ended, Mi Feng snatched his phone back. Through clenched teeth, he threatened me in a low voice. "If you really dare set foot in my house this weekend." Before he could finish, the ringtone blared again. It was still that maddening. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." Startled, he reflexively answered it. "Mom, I swear I was not threatening him." When the weekend came, I carried the boxes of seasonal fruit and reluctantly went to the Me family's home. I stood outside their security door for a full 3 minutes. Before finding the courage to knock, I took at least 8 deep breaths to steady myself. The instant the door opened, Mrs. Me, wearing a little floral apron, greeted me with a beaming smile. Her smile could not have looked more sincere. She was so welcoming, as though we had known each other for over a decade. She took the fruit basket from my hands and kept scolding me affectionately. Just coming was enough. Why spend money on gifts? Then she led me to the living room sofa. Feng sat imposingly in the center of the sofa. He held a sharp fruit knife and was peeling an apple. The way he peeled it had a bizarre ritualistic quality. The paper-thin peel formed one long unbroken strip. It did not snap once. The cold gleaming blade glided close against the apple flesh. His hand was so steady, like a lead surgeon performing delicate surgery. He never even looked up, but I knew perfectly well this whole performance was for my benefit. The unspoken message was clear. Punk, see that? I am the one holding the knife. Trembling, I sat on the sofa opposite him. Before long, Mikai pushed open her bedroom door and came out. She had changed into casual loungewear. A loose, pure white t-shirt. Her glossy black hair was loosely tied into a low ponytail. A few stray locks fell playfully beside her cheeks. Her beautiful face still wore that cool, unruffled expression. She gave me a faint glance. It was only a brief glance, as if saying, "You came, but it has nothing to do with me." Then she went straight to the table and sat down. When she reached up to adjust her ponytail, her slender arm lifted slightly, and the loose t-shirt collar slipped down a little. I quickly looked away. I turned my gaze with lightning speed, though I looked away fast. The long half hour that followed was definitely the strangest meal of my life. Throughout the meal, Mrs. Me kept piling food onto my plate. Tender braised pork, sweet and sour ribs, stir-fried shrimp, and braised fish. In the bowl before me, the food had already formed a small mountain, but her chopsticks showed no sign of stopping. Shovel, eat more meat. Boys like you will not attract girls if you are too skinny. My bowl was so heavy I could barely hold it. Meanwhile, that bastard Feng kept stepping on the top of my foot beneath the table. The rhythm of his stomps was almost musical. Whenever I tried to speak to Mikai, the top of my right foot would instantly take a precise hit. I seriously suspected beneath the table he had secretly installed some kind of infrared auto-targeting system. As for Mikai, from start to finish, she just kept her head down and ate. Her chopsticks always went for the greens, tofu, and mushrooms. She cycled endlessly between those three vegetable dishes. Her movements were so methodical, like a machine following a program. Even the tap of her chopsticks against the porcelain bowl's rim was barely audible throughout the entire meal. She did not utter a single word. It was as though this meal existed in an entirely different world from her. At that moment, I felt like a slab of pork belly on a cutting board. Two gleaming cleavers were competing to chop me to pieces. As for what this piece of meat thought, no one cared. After we had eaten and drunk our fill, I made up an excuse to use the bathroom. Passing Mikai's bedroom in the hall, I saw her door was not fully closed. Out of curiosity, I instinctively peeked through the gap. On her desk lay an old photo album. The album lay face down, hiding its cover. Right beside it was a thick workbook, open on the desk. It was too far away, so I could not make out what was written inside. Just then, Feng's heavy footsteps approached from behind me. I moved faster than I ever had in my life and put on a confused look, as if searching for the bathroom. When it was time for me to leave, Mrs. Me insisted on stuffing into my hands a large, bulging plastic bag. It was packed with snacks, fresh fruit, plus 2 bottles of her homemade chili sauce. Feng stood like a guard at the door, his arms folded across his chest. He raised his chin high and delivered what he thought was a badass warning. Do not come around my house so much. At that, Mrs. Me immediately turned and shot him a vicious glare. That fierce look roughly translated to, "You little brat, do you want me to smack you right now?" Feng instantly folded. "All right. Take it slow on the way home. Stay safe." When I finally stepped out of the apartment building, I could not help myself. I turned and looked up at the 3rd floor window. The curtain seemed to sway ever so slightly. It was probably the wind. 99%. It was the wind, but that remaining 1% possibility kept me tossing and turning in bed that night, awake until after 2 in the morning, before I finally drifted off. As time passed, life returned to normal. Gossip on the school forum always flared up fast and faded just as quickly. Before long, the gossip-hungry crowd moved on to the next scandal. I thought I could finally live peacefully as a perfectly ordinary, completely unnoticed nobody. But gradually, I noticed something strange. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, I went to the library without fail. I always chose the row by the windows, the second seat from the left. Yet for 3 straight weeks, whenever I arrived on time, at my usual spot, I found that particular seat had somehow been saved in advance. Placed neatly on the desk was an unopened bottle of mineral water. There was no name on it, nor any note or message nearby. It just stood there alone, silent on the desktop. I thought some careless student must have left it behind, so I opened it and drank it without hesitation. The second time it happened, I drank that one too. When I saw it for the 3rd time, I had my doubts, but in the end, I still could not resist twisting off the cap. After all, If the water is free, I might as well drink it. Then one day, as I used my meal card at the cafeteria counter, the card reader plainly showed that I still had over 300 yuan left on it. I clearly remembered putting only 100 yuan on it last week. No matter how I calculated it, there was no way. An extra 200 yuan should have appeared from nowhere. I checked the top-up records. They showed a cash deposit, but there was no way to tell who had made it. After Feng Yuan heard the story, he cracked sunflower seeds and teased, "Could it be you? Have attracted a secret admirer?" Jia Liang poured cold water on that idea. "Give me a break. Stop dreaming. The system probably just glitched." Zhang Wei analyzed it with a serious expression. "Maybe one of the cafeteria ladies saw how skinny you are and secretly put you on a targeted aid program." Their theories actually made sense to me. It was probably a system malfunction. Then another strange thing happened. It was a rainy day. A sudden downpour hit. Of course, I had not brought an umbrella. I could only stand stupidly under the steps by the classroom building entrance, staring worriedly at the white curtain of rain. I was wondering whether to dash through the rain back to my dorm when I turned around and saw on the nearby steps, somehow, a transparent umbrella. It was perfectly clean, without a single drop of water on it. It looked as if someone had just unwrapped it and deliberately left it there. I looked around. The hallway was empty. There was not a soul in sight. Whatever. I would use it first. I could not go back soaked to the bone. Taken separately, these things all had reasonable explanations. The saved seat could have been a coincidence. The extra meal card money could have been a system error. The umbrella could have been left by someone careless. But when I linked them all together, they gave me a faint, unspoken sense of romance. When I told the 3 clowns in my dorm, Feng Yuan slapped his thigh. Holy crap, could our campus beauty really be behind it? The 4 of us looked at each other. Then we all burst out laughing, myself included. How could that possibly be true? Until one afternoon. It was the last class of the day, and it was consumer psychology. The professor's voice reading slides aloud worked better than sleeping pills. I collapsed on my desk and slept like the dead. When I woke up groggily, I found a school uniform jacket draped over me. It was definitely not mine, because mine was hanging right on my chair. This jacket had been folded neatly and gently placed over my shoulders. A long strand of hair clung to its collar. I picked up the jacket and instinctively held it to my nose. A faint scent of gardenias reached me. It was exactly the scent I had noticed during military training. My heart skipped a beat. I abruptly sat upright and scanned the classroom. Almost everyone had already left. Only me, Kai, remained, still sitting by the window in the back row, quietly packing her bag with her head bowed. She was wearing only a thin shirt, while her jacket had mysteriously vanished. It was an early autumn evening. The air had already turned chilly. I noticed that her bare forearms were covered with tiny goosebumps. I grabbed the jacket and hurried over to her. "This jacket is yours, right?" She did not even look up, as she replied coldly, "The air conditioning is set to low. I was worried you would catch a cold. You might pass it on to me." I stared at her for a moment, then glanced over the goosebumps on her arms and at the jacket in my hands, which still held the warmth of her body. "You are freezing yourself, yet you are worried I might infect you? Do you honestly believe that nonsense?" "Thanks, but I do not need it." She zipped up her bag, then stood up and coldly tossed out, "Just stay away from me." Then she walked out without looking back. I stood there alone in the empty classroom, still clutching her jacket, looking like a complete idiot. The gardenia scent was incredibly faint. I had to hold it very close to smell it clearly. I could not resist bringing the jacket under my nose again. If Feng Yuan had been there, he would definitely have pointed at my nose and called me a total pervert. Luckily, he was not there, so I shamelessly smelled it a 3rd time. Things started to feel wrong. It all goes back to the photography club. When my sophomore year had just begun, the school clubs were recruiting new members. I followed the crowd and joined the photography club. My main purpose, really, was to pick up some extracurricular credits. At my first club activity, I arrived and saw that Kai was there too. That did not surprise me much. What really surprised me was that the club had another notable figure. His name was Teng. He was the kind of rich kid who drove a Porsche to class. Apparently, in his dorm room, limited edition sneakers filled 3 entire walls. He would drink nothing but pour over coffee. At club dinners, he never stooped to eating in the cafeteria. He would always wave his hand grandly and order takeout for the entire club. He did this not to show how generous he was, but simply to enjoy the vanity he felt when everyone watched him pay. I heard he had pursued Kai relentlessly since high school. He had pestered her for 3 whole years and been rejected by her just as mercilessly. Unexpectedly, after starting college, he ended up at the same university. He bragged to everyone that it was fate bringing them together. I thought it was simply a toad dreaming of marrying a swan. He just refused to give up. His attempts to impress Kai were shamelessly obvious. He would constantly give her high-end cameras and expensive lenses. He was always saying, "This is a perfect match for your style. Do not be shy. Take it." Mikai rejected him to his face every time, but he shamelessly forced the gifts onto her desk. Mikai said nothing. She simply picked them up and threw them in the trash. Teng never got angry. He would just grin and say, "No problem. If you throw it away, I will buy you another one." At first, he barely acknowledged my existence. In his worldview, someone like me, wearing cheap canvas shoes and carrying a worn-out canvas bag, posed no threat at all. I was not even qualified to be his rival. That changed when the club organized a dinner. Everyone took a seat wherever they liked. Mikai unexpectedly walked straight over to me and sat down beside me. I had no idea whether it was coincidence or deliberate, but the moment she settled in, I noticed sharply that her hand was from my arm by no more than 5 centimeters. She was close enough that I could clearly feel the warmth radiating from her body. I instinctively pulled my arm back. After a few rounds of drinks, people began urging one another to toast. That sycophant Zhao came over with his glass. "Spatula, come on, do me a favor. Bottoms up." I had just raised my glass to down it when Mikai suddenly reached over and pressed her hand over my glass. Her fingers accidentally brushed the back of my hand. "He has stomach problems. He cannot drink," she said flatly. The entire room fell deathly silent. The silence lasted a full 2 seconds. During those long 2 seconds, I could even hear my heart pounding like a drum. I also heard Wang across from me slam his chopsticks down. Mikai, however, acted as if nothing had happened. She calmly picked up a peanut without changing expression. She looked so composed. You would think she had not just stopped me from drinking. I was stunned. How did she know about my stomach trouble? Then I suddenly remembered. The club had gone on an outdoor photography trip the week before. At noon, while we were eating box lunches together, I felt a sharp cramp in my stomach after eating. I rubbed it for quite a while and casually complained to Feng beside me. "My old problem is acting up again. Cold food always makes my stomach cramp." Mikai had been sitting behind us at the time, less than 2 meters away. I had assumed she was fully focused on the camera's viewfinder and had no time for us. I never expected her to hear every word. Teng's expression instantly darkened. It was not a sudden burst of anger, but a slow, heavy, oppressive gloom. It was like the mercury in a thermometer, slowly falling lower and lower. It was as if someone had slowly opened a freezer door, and an icy chill was seeping out bit by bit. After dinner, Teng called out to me at the door. He walked over and patted my shoulder with a half smile. He used precisely the right amount of pressure, somewhere between a buddy's friendliness and a veiled warning. "Buddy, a girl like Mikai is not someone from your social class to mess with. I am only giving you a friendly warning, so you do not embarrass yourself later." I rudely grabbed his hand and brushed it off my shoulder. "She only stopped me from drinking. That is all. You are reading way too much into it." He pulled back the corner of his mouth in a cold sneer. His smile seemed to say, "Fine, you have guts. Just wait and see. Do not come crying for mercy later." Sure enough, late that very night, a post quietly appeared on the school's online bulletin board. It was an anonymous viral thread. The title was impossible to ignore. A deep dive into Guchuan's true family background. The post exposed every detail of my past. Nothing was left out. It said my family lived in a remote little town and ran a shabby corner store. Our business had even suffered a major setback 2 years earlier and lost a great deal of money. We were still buried in debt. It said that during high school, I had worked to cover my living expenses. By taking odd jobs at a milk tea shop, I had worked myself to the bone for 12 yuan an hour. My college tuition and living expenses were barely covered by the school's financial aid and scholarships. To be honest, every detail revealed in the post was an undeniable fact. The comment section erupted. Every comment was mocking. A broke loser dreaming of landing a swan. What kind of bizarre taste does the campus beauty have? Does he even deserve her? Expressionless, I placed my phone face down on the desk. Then I stared blankly at the ceiling. I did not mention it to my roommates. After lights out, I tossed and turned in bed for a long time. During that time, Mikai's mother called me again and invited me over. She said Feng was itching to find someone to play a few games of chess. I went, despite my misgivings, only to discover that Feng's chess was so awful it was practically criminal. He lost 3 games in a row and shamelessly demanded several take-backs in every game. While Feng was in the bathroom, his mother mysteriously pulled me into the kitchen and shoved a large jar of golden orange honey into my arms. And he heard Xiaokai mention that your stomach is not very strong. From now on, remember to make yourself a glass of honey water every morning. It is excellent for your stomach. Hearing that, my heart gave a sudden jolt. Mikai had actually told her mother about my stomach problem, but I did not dare read too much into it. When I left that day, Mikai had her back to me as she watered the plants on the balcony. She did not even turn around before casually tossing out a remark. "That pothose plant you keep, do not water it too much. Its roots will rot." I was completely baffled. I had never owned a pothose plant. Even so, I remembered her words. Later on, I visited the family home for the 3rd time. On the phone, Mikai's mother frantically said that a pipe had burst. Spatula, didn't you say you knew a little about plumbing and electrical repairs? Come take a look for Annie. The place is practically flooding. I rushed over and saw that the pipe really was leaking, but the location and amount of the leak were almost suspiciously precise. It was as if someone had deliberately loosened a screw half a turn with a wrench. The flow was neither too strong nor too weak, just enough to make it look as if the household urgently needed a man to fix the pipe. A perfectly convincing setup. I resigned myself to crouching beneath the sink and grunting as I tightened the screw. Mikai stood quietly beside me and handed me various tools. The instant she handed me the wrench, her fingertips brushed against the back of my hand. The contact was incredibly brief. At most, it lasted 0.3 seconds. Yet in that tiny fraction of a second, my hand trembled uncontrollably. The heavy wrench nearly fell straight into the drain. Can you actually do this? She asked, looking down at me. Of course, why wouldn't I? My answering voice had unconsciously risen half an octave higher than usual. After finally fixing the pipe, Feng waved me over and called me onto the balcony. He lit a cigarette and leaned against the railing. His eyes gazed deeply at the traffic bustling below. He remained silent for a very long time, so long that I began to wonder whether he planned to spend the entire night standing on the balcony. Spatula, he finally spoke. His tone was completely different from his usual arrogance. His voice was very low and faintly hoarse. My little sister has been withdrawn since childhood. She does not like talking or smiling. Our father died young. All these years, my mother and I have protected her like the most precious thing in the world. I listened quietly, without interrupting. You have experienced her awful temper yourself. The truth is, she is not deliberately pretending to be aloof. She genuinely does not know how to communicate normally with people, or how to express her true feelings. Whenever something upsets or frustrates her, everything that comes out of her mouth is the opposite of what she means. Once, she wanted to compliment a female classmate's new dress, but when the words reached her lips, they somehow became, "That outfit of yours is nothing special today." The girl was so furious that her face turned green. He exhaled a long ring of smoke. All her life, the friends she could truly open up to could be counted on one hand. I could not help adding, Mikai is actually a good person. I regretted it the moment the words left my mouth. The compliment sounded painfully weak, but aside from that, I honestly had no idea how to respond to him. Feng took the cigarette butt in his hand and crushed it hard into the ashtray. He suddenly turned and glared straight into my eyes. I am warning you, if you ever make her shed a single tear, I will break your damn legs. He paused and softened his tone. But if you stop coming over, she will definitely hide somewhere and cry. And when that happens, I will break your legs anyway. I was so helpless, I could have cried. Big brother, so my legs are doomed either way. That depends on how you behave. A brief silence settled over the balcony. Faintly from below came the laughter of children chasing one another. Music from a group dance in a distant plaza drifted up in broken bursts. Before I left, I was changing my shoes in the entryway when I accidentally heard from the kitchen Mikai's mother ask her quietly, "Zhao Kai, what do you think of Spatula?" A few seconds of silence followed. Then Mikai's cool voice rang out, "Mom, you put too much salt in today's pork rib soup." After hearing that, her mother burst out laughing. Her smile held the knowing certainty of a mother who understood her daughter best. I was completely confused at the time, but I etched that conversation into my memory. It was only much later that I suddenly understood. Mikai never nitpicked about the taste of food. Her sudden remark, "The soup is too salty," was simply because she desperately needed a sentence, completely unrelated to the question, to hide her panic and avoid answering. Yet that avoidance itself was already the truest answer. That post exposing my background remained blatantly visible on the forum, although it was no longer as popular as when it first appeared. Every few days, bored people would bump it back up and drag me through the mud again. I pretended not to see it. It was just air. Feng Yuan and the others couldn't stand it. They clamored to report the post for me. I waved them off and said, "Forget it. Let them do whatever they want. Besides, everything written in the post was true anyway." But that bastard Wang Teng clearly had no intention of letting me off so easily. He sent someone to pass along a message, asking me to meet him on the field that evening for a private talk. He didn't even send me a WeChat message. He had to make a whole production of sending someone to deliver it. He set it up like a mob negotiation. The field was deserted at night. The two of us stood facing each other. He wore a jacket with no visible brand, but even a fool could tell it had to be absurdly expensive. With his hands in his pockets, he looked at me with the same condescending stare as always. "Zhao Yang, what kind of miserable circumstances does your family live in? Don't you know your own situation? If Mikai ends up with you, What kind of good life could she possibly have? The material life I can give her is something you couldn't afford even after 10 lifetimes of hard work. I stared straight at him, without answering. I'm not deliberately making things difficult for you. A mocking smile curled at his lips. I'm only thinking about her future. I stayed silent for a full 10 seconds. Not because his words had wounded my pride, but because I was rapidly calculating how to fire back. She isn't a product sitting on a shelf, waiting to be sold to the highest bidder. Just because someone offers the highest price doesn't mean she belongs to him. The smile froze on his face. A poor boy's pride is the most worthless thing in this society. With that, he turned and strode away. After he left, I stood alone on the deserted field for a long time. The night wind was fierce. It whipped the hem of my thin clothes. I wasn't actually that angry. Somehow, though, I suddenly remembered the days I worked at a bubble tea shop in high school. Once, a short-tempered customer complained that the milk tea was too sweet, then smashed the cup onto the floor and demanded a fresh one. To keep the peace, the manager made me clean up the spilled milk tea. I crouched on the floor in humiliation, wiping up the sticky liquid bit by bit. The customers at the next table watched me with great interest, pointing and whispering as if I were a joke. It was then that I truly understood one thing. Being poor is not shameful in itself, but poverty can make you feel as though you stand a head shorter in front of certain people. I thought I'd long since become immune to this kind of crap, but Wang Teng's words tonight were still like a poison needle, driving deep into my heart, striking precisely. The old wound I thought had long since scabbed over and healed. The next day, the school forum suddenly blew up with a set of chat screenshots. They were supposedly private messages between me and a friend. In the screenshots, I shamelessly bragged about freeloading at the campus beauty's house and scheming to milk the me family for all they were worth. I even bragged that it was only through me Kai's connections that I had risen to prominence in the club. The wording in these chat logs was meticulously precise. Every sentence hit exactly the most offensive nerve. The chat logs were obviously forged. The other person's profile picture and username were completely fabricated, but the forgery was remarkably sophisticated. Unless you examine every detail under a magnifying glass, you could not spot a single flaw. The post comment section had completely descended into chaos. This guy is disgusting. Is he so poor he's gone crazy? Stay away from the campus beauty. Those were some of the more polite insults. My first reaction upon seeing the post was not to rush to publish a statement proving my innocence. Instead, all I could think about was, would Kai see this post? If she did, what would she think of me? I ran like a madman to camp out beneath the building where she had class. I waited for more than 2 hours. The cold November wind poured down my collar. By the time I finally stopped waiting, both my feet were numb with cold. At last, she came out of the building. She was holding her phone. On its screen was unmistakably the post spreading rumors about me. She raised her head and gave me a cool, passing glance. I opened my mouth, desperately trying to explain something. To tell her the screenshots were all fake. To say I had never said those disgusting things. To say I was not that vile a person. Her gaze rested on my face for a brief moment. Then, she put away her phone expressionlessly. Without giving me so much as a word, she simply turned around and walked away without looking back. No anger, no accusations, not even disappointment. She revealed nothing of what she felt and simply walked away. I stood alone beneath the academic building. It was completely dark by then. The dim yellow streetlights made my shadows stretch far behind me. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. Feng and the others had no idea that I pulled a thick quilt over my head and hid in that dark, cramped space for a very long time. Early the next morning, I took the club withdrawal application I had filled out to the club room. I had made up my mind. I was going to leave the club, keep my distance from her, and stop bringing trouble into her life. A poor man's pride might be worthless, but at the very least, I still had enough self-awareness. When I pushed open the clubroom door, I saw Kai standing in the center of the classroom. Wang Teng was sitting opposite her, his face livid. A girl was standing beside him. She had a short bob cut and black-rimmed glasses perched on her nose. She hugged a laptop tightly to her chest. She was Kai's roommate, Lianyan. She was a top student in computer science. Her programming skills reportedly ranked among the top 3 in the entire department. What's going on? I froze in the doorway. Kai did not turn around. She was speaking in a tone so flat, it sounded like she was reading a product manual. The IP address that first uploaded the screenshots was traced to this communal computer in the clubroom. The account used to log in and publish the post was yours. Unfortunately, You didn't merge the layers cleanly. Add for 100% magnification. The jagged edges are clearly visible. You even thought you were clever enough to alter the chat background color, but the color codes were still off by devalues. Lianyan pushed up her glasses. Then she said, one is F5, F5, F5. The other is F7, F7, F7. They are genuinely difficult to distinguish with the naked eye, but one scam with a color picker immediately exposes the forgery. Mikai rotated the computer screen halfway around, pointing it straight at Wang Teng's face. All the evidence is right here. Will you post a clarification, an apology on the forum yourself? Or do you need me to do it for you and make this evidence public? Wang Teng's face instantly went white. Then it flushed bright red. He shot up from his chair. The chair legs scraped across the floor, letting out a grating screech. Mikai, what do you even see in this penniless loser? What does he have to offer? He can't give you the life you want. The classroom fell into deathly silence. Only the occasional footsteps from the hallway could be heard. Mikai looked at him quietly. Not a ripple of emotion touched her voice. Wang Teng, let me make this clear one last time. I have never had any feelings for you. I never did before, and I never will. She tilted her head slightly, and from the corner of her eye, spotted me standing in the doorway. The expression on her face shifted by the slightest degree. It was so subtle that unless you watched her closely, you would never notice it, but I caught it instantly. Second, she paused. Her voice remained soft, but every word she uttered landed like nails hammered into the floor. This ends here. Furious, Wang Teng slammed the table. Then he stormed out like a raging lion. As he passed me, he deliberately slammed his shoulder into mine. I stood where I was, without moving an inch. Reading the room, Lianyan quickly said, well, I should get going. Then she hugged her precious laptop and darted away. In the vast classroom, only Mikai and I remained. Mikai walked straight up to me. Her gaze fell on the club withdrawal application in my hand. She stared at the paper for a full 2 seconds. Then she slowly raised her hand and, with gentle but unquestionable certainty, slid it out of my grasp. It wasn't a rough snatch. It was the absolute certainty of, I'm confiscating this. You'd better not try to stop me. She folded the paper twice and casually slipped it into her backpack. Who said you could leave the club? I stared blankly as she zipped up her backpack. I opened my mouth, my voice dry and hoarse. Yesterday, you walked away without saying a word. I thought you thought I believed that nonsense? She raised her head and looked straight into my eyes. It was the first time I had ever seen such a clear emotion in her eyes. It wasn't her usual cool detachment, nor anger at the rumors. It was the exasperation of someone thinking, what on earth is going on in that head of yours? I went back yesterday and asked Lianyan to investigate the evidence. I stayed up until 3 in the morning before I had it all figured out. She tossed out those words and turned to leave. After taking just 2 steps, she stopped without turning around. If anyone bullies you again, remember to tell me. Don't keep trying to bear everything alone. With that, she walked away without looking back. I stood rooted to the spot like a wooden post. My brain completely crashed. It really had crashed completely. That night, the airtight chain of evidence Lianyan had compiled was pinned prominently to the campus forum's front page. The post bore an intensely technical title, Technical Reconstruction and Evidence Disclosure Regarding the Recent Rumor Post. The wording was calm and objective, without the slightest trace of personal emotion. But the evidence was so meticulously airtight, it could have passed for an outstanding graduation thesis. The mood in the comments completely reversed overnight. That rich heir went this far to ruin someone else's reputation. His methods for spreading rumors are unbelievably despicable. Poor Spatula. You have my sympathy for 1 whole second. The campus beauty's move was insanely cool. That was seriously badass. Feng Yuan shoved his phone screen right in front of my face. Spatula bro. Look at the top comment. So, are the campus beauty and Spatula actually dating? Whatever. I'm shipping them already. This comment alone has over 9,000 likes. I snatched the phone away and placed it face down on the bed. If anyone bullies you again, remember to tell me. Those words were like a spell that replayed in my head all night. After that, our days together entered an incredibly subtle Schrödinger-like state. The relationship between Mikai and me seemed to have gone beyond ordinary friendship, but still fell far short of being lovers. We were much closer than strangers, yet neither of us had the courage to tear through that fragile barrier between us. I didn't dare break through it. There were simply too many reasons. Compared with mine, her family background was worlds above mine. She was so dazzling, and I always felt I wasn't good enough for her. If she rejected me, even the small connection between us might disappear. The reasons seemed perfectly clear, one after another, but every one of them was really just an excuse. I knew there would be a New Year's Eve gala at the end of the semester. Feng Yuan practically dragged me there. I said I really didn't want to go. She said, if you don't go, I'll dump the poems you wrote in high school into the class group chat. After remembering what those poems were about, I went anyway. The venue was packed shoulder to shoulder. Lights bounced wildly across the stage. Someone was singing into a microphone. I curled up in a corner of the back row, planning to watch the acts and slip away. Halfway through the show, the host announced a surprise segment. A girl walked onto the stage beneath the lights. She was the vice president of Mikai's photography club. We had spoken a few times before. She seemed very gentle. Holding a large bouquet, she stood at center stage and spoke into the microphone. "Senior Spatula, I've liked you for a long time. Will you be my boyfriend?" The cheers and shouts from the entire venue nearly blew the roof off. A blinding spotlight shone directly on my face. Hundreds of eyes from every direction focused on me all at once. My brain instantly froze. It stopped functioning completely. It was as if a system crash warning had popped up in my mind, frantically flashing that the program needed a forced restart. Yet in that moment of mental paralysis, my eyes reacted on instinct. Amid the enormous sea of people, I desperately searched for Mikai. At last, I spotted her on the left side of the audience. Her expression looked especially cold, but the bottle of purified water clenched in her hand betrayed her. The transparent bottle had been forcibly crushed into a deep dent, kept giving off the crisp sound of twisting plastic. My gaze lingered on the twisted bottle for a moment, then she suddenly stood up. I sensed the hesitation in her movement. The instant she rose, she seemed ready to retreat to her seat. Lianyan, sitting beside her, glanced over. Mikai bit down hard on her lower lip and finally stepped forward. Everyone's attention was instantly drawn to her. She parted the packed crowd and walked steadily toward me beneath the spotlight. Her steps were not hurried. It was as though each step helped her overcome an inner struggle. She climbed the stairs illuminated by the spotlight and finally stopped in front of me. She held out her hand and clasped mine tightly. Her skin felt astonishingly cold. Her fingertips were almost icy. The bones of her long, slender fingers were sharply defined. I could clearly feel the slight tremor in her fingertips, yet her grip on me was astonishingly strong. She turned to face everyone in the audience. The microphone clearly picked up her voice. "Spatula is already taken." The audience erupted. I looked down at her. Her ears were red all the way to her neck. Her lips were trembling. Her eyes glistened with tears. Her entire body was rigid with tension. As she fought to keep the tears from falling, she was still desperately forcing her face to look calm, but she was close to breaking, like a wall covered in cracks. Then she lowered her voice and whispered, so softly that only I could hear her, "If you dare say no, my brother will break your legs." I smiled with 800 pairs of eyes watching me. Amid the lights and screaming, I smiled until my eyes curved. I turned my hand over hers and enclosed it. She was still trembling, so I tightened my grip a little more. I have a girlfriend." She turned her head away and covered her eyes with her other hand. I saw tears spill through her fingers. I also saw the smile she couldn't suppress at the corners of her mouth. Feng Yuan's voice from below tore through the entire venue. "Holy crap, I told you, it was the campus beauty. Didn't I say that from the start?" The entire venue burst into laughter. I held her hand and felt that the world was terribly loud, but wonderfully warm. During winter break, I went to the Mi family home to celebrate the new year as her boyfriend. When Mikai saw me, she rolled her eyes first, but then poured me a drink. In her way of expressing it, it probably meant, "Fine, I accept him." Mi's mother prepared a table overflowing with food, almost twice as much as the last few times I had visited. After New Year's Eve dinner, we were going to take a family photo. Mi's mother asked me to get the photo album from the cabinet. It was the same album I had noticed outside her bedroom the first time I visited the Mi family. I didn't hold the album securely, and it slipped to the floor with a thud. Photographs scattered everywhere. I crouched down to gather them, but my hand stopped halfway. An extremely old photograph had fallen out. The image quality was poor, as though someone had casually taken it with a phone from an upstairs window and had it printed later. The photograph showed a street. In the pouring rain, a boy in a school uniform held an umbrella over the head of a crouching girl, while the entire left side of his body was soaked. I recognized that uniform because the boy was me. It was outside my high school during my first year. On a stormy day, I saw a girl crouching by the roadside, her head buried in her knees and her shoulders shaking. I walked over and held my umbrella over her. "Don't get soaked. You'll catch a cold." She looked up at me, and I left the umbrella with her. Then I ran off. I completely forgot about it afterward. It was the kind of small thing that took only a few seconds. Once it was done, it was over. I had no reason to remember it. My hand trembled as I held the photograph. At some point, Mikai had come to stand beside me. She glanced at the photograph in my hand, and her expression finally fell apart. She wasn't cold. She was panicked, truly panicked. She reached out to snatch it away. "No, I'm not letting you take it. This is you, isn't it?" She bit her lip and said nothing. Her ears were so red. They were redder than I thought humanly possible. Mi's mother came out of the kitchen carrying a fruit platter. Seeing the two of us like that, she laughed. "All right, stop hiding it." She sat down on the sofa and told me something I had never known. On her first day at the new school in her first year of high school, Mikai was drenched by the rain. That day, She panicked and cried because she couldn't find her classroom. She crouched by the roadside, afraid to move. When she got home, she didn't say a word. When I was tidying her room, I found this photograph. It had been printed and placed on her desk. I asked her who the boy was. She didn't answer. Mi's mother looked at Mikai with tenderness and heartache in her eyes. I secretly tried to investigate for her, but Mikai had transferred in halfway through the semester and moved away with me after only half a semester. The face in the photograph was impossible to make out. I could only identify the school uniform. I asked teachers and several parents from her old school, but no one matched the boy. Then we moved to another city, and every lead went cold. That was until your military training went viral online. The moment I saw the style and silhouette of that uniform, I knew it was you. Did you really think that dinner was a coincidence? My head suddenly buzzed. Every clue instantly connected. The warmth she showed when she first invited me to dinner wasn't because her daughter had gone viral and she was eager to meet her daughter's boyfriend. It was because the boy she had searched for 3 whole years, the boy with the umbrella, had finally appeared. Feng had blocked my path. Her mother had sent him to sound me out. The bottle of water handed to me in the library. The 200 yuan she had quietly added to my meal card. The umbrella offered to me on rainy days. And the coat draped over my shoulders in class. None of that care had begun with military training. It had begun with that umbrella 3 years earlier. For an entire year, this family of 3 had gently closed in around me, and it all began with 5 seconds I had completely forgotten. I stared at Mikai. She turned her head away and refused to meet my eyes. The tips of her ears were bright red. Her jaw was clenched tightly. She looked like a tiny cat with its fur standing on end, still stubbornly pretending she wasn't flustered. She didn't move when I called her. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" She replied quietly. "You never asked." Laughing, I pulled her into my arms, right in front of Mi's mother and Feng, who was peeking out from the living room. "Feng, I'm going to get a knife." Mi's mother snapped. "Sit down." Feng obediently sat back down. There isn't much else worth going into. Feng and I became Go buddies. Every Sunday, I went to the Mi family's home for a game of Go. He was terrible at Go, but refused to admit defeat. I gave him a 3-stone handicap to start. He also loved taking back his moves. Whenever a loss got him worked up, he'd slap the table and demand another game, only to lose again. 2 photographs hung side by side on the living room wall. One was an old photograph taken during a torrential downpour. 2 teenagers caught in the downpour. The other was a new wedding photograph. In the church, she smiled, her eyes curving into crescents. Mi's mother wrote a line beneath them with a calligraphy brush. 1 umbrella, 3 years of waiting, a lifetime together. Feng Yuan, Chen Zi, and Zhang Tao brought up old grievances whenever we gathered each year. If we hadn't urged you to stir up that whole mess back then, you wouldn't have this ending today. All right, I admit it. You're the heroes. Dinner's on me. Feng Yuan, you say that every time. And every time, we end up at the cafeteria. One day, while sorting through old things, I found a stack of receipts. They were from Mikai's for years at university. Proof of the money she had secretly added to my meal card. She had kept a record of every payment, neatly tucked inside an old textbook. I took them to her and asked, "How many times did you actually top up my card?" She was curled up on the sofa, flipping through a book, and didn't even look up. Her tone was exactly the same as it had been at school. "It has nothing much to do with you." I carefully put the stack of receipts away into the back of that old photo album. The album also held an umbrella, 1 rainstorm, and 1 girl I had forgotten for 3 whole years. Outside the album was the girl who had waited 3 years, and the words she had never managed to say. And now I say those